Do we begin now, caller?
Yes, Fire, you can start.
Oh, okay, thank you. So good evening, everyone. Welcome to our roundtable with Congressman Jamaal Bowman. And because we don't have a lot of time, we'll get right to the meat of what we are here for. So Crystal, will you please take it away and start with our opening statement? Thank you.
Good evening, all. First, I want to thank you all. I want to say thank you to all those who are in attendance for this meeting, including Congressman Jamaal Bowman, esteemed Department of Education staff, parents, students, and any other Bronx education stakeholders. On behalf of the Bronx Parents Leaders Advocacy Group, I would like to thank you for taking a moment to engage with us. Our hope is that when we assemble together, we're not only have a transfer of knowledge, but also a facilitation of a socioeconomic cohesion, which will drive the compulsion for an increased productivity and safety for our children in this upcoming school year. Your invitation to this engagement was not so much an answer to the historically challenging legacy of inadequate educational outcomes for the children of the Bronx, but we are instead hoping that you will join us in our quest to fight for the exclusion, depriving us from the decision-making process and marginalization of our children's education, which we feel is happening currently in this school system today. We are here today asking for your partnership in elevating the voices of the voiceless parents in the Bronx. We ask that you open your mind as well as your heart and really listen to us, guide us, and join us as we try to attempt to stabilize the empowerment of our children. We are humbly presenting our findings to you today, and we ask that you would foster a new relationship between the parents enduring this pandemic and the regulations that will put their families in jeopardy. This is not another nuance, but a direct assault on the lives and the livelihood of every child in this state. By listening to our parents' voices and pressing for policy change, you are helping the underserved and the unheard. At this very moment, it's making remote options available for those who need it. It's ensuring that those who are afraid to attend in person have the tools that they need at home. But most of all, it's letting parents know that you are with them and that their voices are heard. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And now I'll give the floor to Zamis Figueroa, who will introduce our congressman.
Good evening, everyone. I am Professor Zanis Figueroa. I have a master's degree in English literature with a minor in the philosophy of education. Tonight, we will be speaking with Congressman Jamaal Bowman, our New York Democratic representative of District 16. We hope he understands the plight of low-income families and community. We hope Congressman Bowman is against the systematic educational policies that hinders funds and prohibit access for all students to obtain an education of quality that fosters a life for success. We hope you understand why we are asking you to stand with us and join our cause. Congressman Bowman, we thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. And now, Congressman, you'll have the floor.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It's good to be with you all. Good to be with some friends and old faces that I know very well and some new faces that I've met over the last several months. I want to start by introducing my Chief of Staff, Sarah Idrisu. Sarah, if you could wave hello and say hi, as well as our Legislative Assistant, Jaime. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, forgive me, but he does great work for our office. Great to be with you all. Really exciting to see the group that you all have assembled. This is something that is really important and needed, not just in the Bronx, but across the city, state, and country. Parents coming together and really organizing to take back their children's education. For those who don't know, I've worked in education for 20 years. Prior to coming to Congress, I was a school teacher, middle school principal, and high school dean of students, and I also taught classes there. So I'm very familiar with the Department of Education and the inner workings of it. It was part of the reason why I decided to write a proposal and open up my own district public middle school in the Bronx, not a charter school, a public middle school. So I know the system pretty well. And this body that you all have formed is essential to your children's education, but the education of all of our children, because at the end of the day, parents have to have a seat at the table and be involved in the decision-making process. This is a tremendous opportunity for many reasons. Number one, the federal government is finally, I think, investing the necessary resources in our public schools that we have been fighting for decades. So that is exciting, not just with the CARES Act, but with the American Rescue Plan. So our schools will hopefully soon begin to receive some of that funding from the federal government. It's also very exciting because the Campaign for Fiscal Equity is in the process of finally being fully funded over the next 3 years. That is another fight that has been going on for decades. Also exciting because we have a new administration coming in the city, which provides opportunities, new opportunities for relationships and development. And your voices are going to be very instrumental in terms of what that looks like. But I would also say it's exciting because the current administration chose a chancellor, Misha Ross Porter, where in my experience is very responsive to the needs of the community. She was my superintendent when I was a principal. She became executive superintendent of the Bronx. I think, yeah, I was with her as executive superintendent for 1 year before we came to Congress. And now that she's a chancellor, she chose a superintendent, Dr. Erica Tabaya, who I know personally as a colleague, to be executive superintendent, and I think is an excellent choice. And I say that because Erica ran effectively one of the most challenging schools and one of the most challenging communities in the city, and she did that for several years. And I also love Erica because she has the credentials. She's Dr. Tabaya, which I think matters. And it's important for us in the city to demand that level of credential, because guess what? Outside of the city, you don't even get a sniff of a superintendency if you don't have that credential. So that's important. And then finally, her focus on literacy, particularly early childhood and elementary literacy, I think is hugely important. You know, I know you all have a lot of questions, and I'll answer those questions. What I would say, and I shared this with Farah on the phone, education, we do a lot in Congress, and we will continue to do a lot in terms of fighting for the funding that you all deserve and need, and also introducing policy that's visionary, like our Green New Deal for public schools policy, which for me and for our office and for advocates who work with us, it's a response, a direct response to the No Child Left Behind policy from 20 years ago. It's a new vision for public schools. It's a new investment in public school, both physical infrastructure, but also in terms of how public schools work from the inside out and how public schools should take a community approach. So we do that from a federal level, but public school is a local issue. So this body here, how you all organize, how you all work with Dr. Tabaya, how you all engage your elected officials locally and hold them accountable, and how you all engage with the city and the chancellor's office is going to be critical. And the last thing I'll say is one of the major parent movements, parent, teacher, student movements that I was a part of before coming to Congress was something called the opt-out movement, where we were really pushing back on the overuse and misuse of standardized testing in our schools on our kids. And that was a parent-led movement, and that led to transformative policy change at the state and local level. And I think this is a moment now where, again, if parents have that seat at the table and organize and exercise their voice, you could be a part of another movement in our schools. And for me, that involves opening schools safely in the moment as we return in September. That involves interagency collaboration. So schools as a sort of hub for community resources and meeting the community's needs. Schools can't do it alone, and our kids are coming off a year of trauma. So how can schools more efficiently connect with social services, housing support, food security, and many other areas where schools don't often know how to do that. So that work is really, really important to me. And I think research shows that that's a really important approach. What does STEM education look like is a third category for me personally, because I sit on the Ed and Labor Committee. I'm vice chair actually of the Ed and Labor Committee, and I'm chair of the Energy Subcommittee on the Science and Tech Committee. And I can tell you the necessity of STEM and STEAM in our schools and in our communities for careers, but also for education. And the other piece I'll mention, and of course, I have probably like 12 education priorities, but the other piece I'll mention is really important. It's early childhood and elementary literacy. Throughout my career, schools have really struggled to support kids with their literacy development, whether it's misdiagnosing or not diagnosing dyslexia, curriculum that's comprehensive and robust, resources and materials for kids to use at home, and then the small group and small class and individualized supports that's necessary and all those things. So I'll stop there, take whatever questions you have, but really, really, really want to emphasize what I said to Farah on the phone. Education is a local issue, and you all are existing within a system that has mayoral control. So how are you going to ensure that the next administration is responding to your needs on a consistent basis as you work with parents across the city? That is going to be critical. And it's not lost on all of us that the governor resigned today. And I mention that because there's going to be a new governor, there's going to be a new lieutenant governor, and then there'll be a race to see who the next governor is going to be. And this is important because one of the things Governor Cuomo was criticized for is having a very heavy-handed, intimidating style to his leadership. And that often spilled over into education. So a lot of the resources that should have been going to our schools didn't, because he used them for other things, which is deplorable and unacceptable. But also with this new money coming in, like the governor often treated the Department of Education at the state level like they were children, and would have them not operate as their own entity, but have to go to him for everything. That's something that also needs to change as well. And it's going to be really important for you all to talk to Commissioner Betty Rosa and Chancellor Lester Young about how to change that. And pretty much build a system the way we all know it should be, and don't take no for an answer and just do it. So I'll stop there and answer whatever questions you have.
Thank you so much, Congressman. I hope you will stay a little bit longer, since you went a little bit over time.
Well, I'll try. I'll make my answer shorter.
We have to bargain in the Bronx. So right now, because Dr. Tobiah has to go, we wanted to give her a chance to speak, because in the Bronx, we're trying to design a new way, right, of educating our kids, taking into consideration their economic situation, their communal situation, and also what's going on in the schools. And Dr. Tobiah would like to speak on some of those initiatives and the fact that, we need funding.
Thank you, Farah. Good to see you, Congressman. Always a pleasure to see you. So just a few quick things, because I don't want to take up a lot of time, because I know it's brief. So one of the things, first of all, we got a powerhouse in this room. I mean, this is a powerhouse full of smart parents who know how to speak up and get attention and really organize. And as all of them know, I'm committed to really educating them and giving them the language of the DOE. That's one of the things we work on our monthly meeting, so they they understand how to get into those kind of conversations. So it's something we work on. And many people on this call, I've met with and support. So it's a great group of people. So two big things I want to mention. One thing that we've been working in collaboration with for over when I was superintendent of 8 is as you know, the Bronx is the community in the state that struggles the most with healthcare and has the worst health outcomes in the state. So we organized a group called FISH, which is a community, a collaboration across the Bronx, or how can we support health initiatives? Because we know that is important to education. Kids have to have good health, come to school in a good way. So that's something that we're working on. So we hope that you can support us with that. There's a lot of different partnerships there that we need support with. Another one is, this is an unprecedented time as far as funding. We have a tremendous amount of funding, and we want to make sure that it's spent so that the parents are indeed at the table and not being told after the fact. So that's important part of our plan. And as you know, and I've spoken to you about the Bronx Expo, which is going to highlight STEM, and that's the first week of June. We're organizing that. We're going to have a parent advisory for that, a student advisory. It's really going to highlight science, education, art, all different kinds of things, and the voice of the parents and students. So we'll need your support with that. So those are two big initiatives that I've been working on this powerhouse group with. And I know they will tell you more because they are not shy, and they are smart, and they are energized. So I'm just honored to be here. It's always a pleasure to collaborate with them and be in partnership with them.
So much, Dr. Tobaya, for that. And now, so we heard you about the reopening, but in the Bronx, parents are adamant about having a remote option. So we have a few folks who will make that case to you and hope that you will join us. Not that we are against the reopening in person, but we need a remote option for families who need it. So we want to make the case to you, and hopefully you'll speak to your friend, Chancellor Porter, and the mayor, and we can get some results from you. So with no further ado, Dr. Calaris Salas Ramirez and Dr. Marie will make the case. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Dr. Marie Will. I'm a physician and a biomedical scientist. I am a long-term New York City resident. I actually got both my MD and my PhD right here in New York City. It's been here a long time. I'm now happy to be a New York City public school parent, and I'd like to speak to you about some of my concerns about our reopening plan for school. Already, COVID has killed over 500 children in the US. I'm sure you know this. Amongst those pediatric cases, about 25% actually occur in kids with zero underlying condition, none at all. What about the other 75%, you may ask? And when I say pre-existing conditions, people may picture rare childhood illnesses, but actually the top two is asthma and obesity. I'd bet money that someone in this small panel here have children with asthma and obesity because they're both very common. When it comes to children, though, death is not the only meaningful measure, right? So tens of thousands of children have been hospitalized to date, many needing ICU level care, many needing mechanical ventilation. Even amongst those who have, I quote, mild symptoms, 1 in 20 goes on to suffer from the entity that we now know as long COVID. That is not a small number. That is at least 1 in every classroom in New York. And even outside that entity of long COVID, there are many other sequelae, from endocrine disturbances to long-term neurologic consequences that kids will have to deal with. And you may say, children get ill all the time, and the political classic is it's just the flu. I just categorically said this is false. Severe illness far exceeds that of all the other childhood illnesses. The flu kills, according to the CDC, about 100 per year. And I just told you that already COVID's got about 500. So I understand that these numbers may pale in comparison to the burden with adults, which is what we've been focusing on. But let me just remind you, as Rochelle Walensky, the CDC director, once said, children are not supposed to die. There is no acceptable number of preventable childhood death. There is no such thing. I don't discount the benefit of in-person school. I have been looking forward to sending my kids back, especially as a young parent who's working and needs childcare. But when Delta variant hit, I think you'd appreciate that changed everything. It has a higher viral load. It's 2 to 3 times more contagious. It carries a higher risk of severe illness and hospitalization, especially for children. Already, we are right now setting single-day records for the number of children admitted with COVID-19 in the US. Many hospital systems around the country are running out of pediatric beds. It's in more dire circumstances than we've ever been in the whole pandemic. Everyone's heard this heartbreaking story of that 11-month-old being airlifted out of Texas children because they're out of bed. What most people don't know is that Texas Children is the largest pediatric hospital in the US. They have the most numbers of beds. That happened there should give you pause about everywhere else. That's a national crisis, and I know that you're focusing on that, but it's also a local one. So I'll give the floor over to Dr. Solis Ramirez to discuss where we are in New York City.
Thank you, Dr. Will. It's good to see you, Dr. Bowman. So I just want to lift some of the things that we're seeing locally, right? So as of last week, we just had 20% of our students from 12 to 17 that were vaccinated. And the city is reporting 60% of our teachers. So although we've engaged in a lot of programs to support initiatives around vaccine, including a vaccine referral program for PAs and PTAs, there's still a significant number of students that have not been vaccinated. And of course, we have significant concerns about our elementary school students that are not eligible for vaccines. And as of right now, the timeline is maybe in November, as they're looking for additional participants in order to validate some of the side effects that may be occurring in children. And so the DOE has basically given local authority to schools to decide what sorts of mitigation factors they're going to engage in. And some of the things that we're concerned about is that without a remote option, we're still going to have significant class size, which Lainey is going to talk to you about. We have a large number of families in Harlem and in the Bronx that are really asking for this option. The other concern is that in terms of testing, we're only testing 10 to 20% of people in school buildings. We have cities like Chicago and LA that are doing 100% of testing for people that are in person. And that could vary based on vaccination. As of right now, the city has also said that if you're vaccinated, you do not have to quarantine. So if you have a student that's been vaccinated or a teacher that's been vaccinated, you're not required to quarantine, but there is some concern in terms of breakthrough cases and some of the long-term effects that could cause in terms of school communities. So I'm gonna pass it back to our Bronx parents.
Thank you so much. And now we'll have Shaniqua Moore dealing with the mental health issue.
Thank you so much. Good evening, Congressman Bowman, parents and community. I'm Shaniqua Moore, licensed social worker with New York State and the CEO of a community-based organization, iRaise, which provides mental health and education services to public school students in New York City. And as an advocate for kids' mental health, it's important that we acknowledge and pay attention to the mental health threats that has been associated with this pandemic. What I would like to do is to present some of the findings from a research study that I had the privilege of assisting with the designing stages. This study was launched through my organization and included a team of researchers to understand the mental health effects of COVID on kids in New York City. Some of the findings of this study that I want to highlight captures the voices of kids in New York City. So these are kids in New York City that have taken this study between the ages of 12 and 17 years old who attend public schools. 90% of these kids revealed wanting to stay home to feel safer from COVID. 80% of kids revealed that they were afraid of dying or losing a loved one due to COVID. 35% of kids revealed losing a loved one due to COVID, which is indicating a rise in a need for grief and loss counseling, particularly in school. Children and adolescents revealed that they were more likely to experience high rates of depression as a result of the pandemic. Students self-reported face coverings, diminishing their quality of life and provoking feelings of anger and uncomfortability. Students also self-reported being afraid and anxious of being bullied and racially discriminated against in school, and as a part of returning to school this fall. Based on research, New York City kids are asking also for help in talking about race and racial discrimination. I think this is something that New York City should also be thinking about and making sure that there's measures in place prior to school reopenings to provide opportunities for kids to have these discussions. Also want to mention that there have been cases where there have been a lot of children who have actually soared and adjusted well during remote learning, who had difficult time academically prior to COVID, but actually soared during remote learning. In addition, 99% of kids that took the study also revealed wanting to receive some type of well-being support through digital applications like online counseling, phone counseling, and such. So we believe that based on these findings of our study, that some of the predictions that we might see in returning to school is possible increase in antisocial behavior in young people when returning to school, such as aggressive behavior, increase in behavioral issues in students, class disruptions, suspensions, and such. Also, we are predicting that face mask mandates are going to be a potential trigger to many students, particularly students that may have mental health issues or students that may have behavioral issues. We're also predicting that a lot of younger kids are going to have difficulty adjusting back into the normal school environment. We're also predicting untreated mental health issues in kids that are returning to school this fall. As an alternative, we believe that kids should be allowed to transition back to school in phases, particularly children with disabilities and kids that may be vulnerable. These type of kids may need to transition back to school at different paces, and we need to allow that. Rather than a one-size-fits-all approach, our recommendations is that kids need to be allowed to have staggering schedules rather than returning back to school in the fall. Other alternatives is for schools to have clinical assessments that allowed kids to be assessed to see whether or not they're actually ready to transition back to school. These might be kids that may have particular issues with social anxiety, with depression, and things of that nature. Our role as experts is to assess kids and to support their development, not to rush their development, and to say when they're ready to transition and to be back into a full in-person environment. So as we recover the right way, we must do so and take into consideration all kids in New York City, not a one-size-fits-all approach, considering kids with special needs, kids with diverse learning styles, kids that may be taking a longer time coping during COVID, and kids that may have particular challenges. Not every kid, again, is ready to acclimate back to the full school environment, so we must support the well-being of every student in New York City public schools. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Shaniqua. And now we'll move on to Leonie and Wima to make the case for class size and the building conditions.
Greetings, Congressman Bowman. My name is Rima Izquierdo, and I am the parent of 4 children currently in the New York City public school system in the Bronx across 3 schools in 3 districts, 3 with asthma, 3 with special needs, and 1 in your district. School buildings are not ready to reopen at full capacity, and the agencies charged with overseeing them are not currently equipped, nor are there policies, protocols, and procedures in place to address the myriad of issues that will inevitably arise, and no plan in sight. My school is located in your district. Just last week had 7 positive COVID cases and did not close as we were promised when we signed up for summer school. My whole school community wanted a closure, even if it was just to wait for the 24-hour investigation to be completed, which was extended twice, and 6 days later, we still have not received results. It is extremely unsettling and disturbing to think what will happen when we are not the only school in the building and the overcrowded high schools we are co-located with come back. Small class sizes have clear, concrete research as to the educational and instructional benefits, but there is a lot to be said about the safety implications as well. A remote option would not only put families with members who have underlying conditions or general anxiety at ease, but it will help increase our safety in terms of minimizing the amount of people on public transportation, on yellow buses, and in our schools and communities as a whole. Leonie will now speak to the importance and dire need for a remote option and smaller class sizes.
Good evening, Representative Bowman. I'm sorry to say that DOE has done nothing to help schools provide the smaller classes and social distancing that would allow students to recover academically from the pandemic and stay safe. Earlier this summer, DOE officials said all but about 75 schools had the space for social distancing, and for those 75 schools, they would help them find space, but they refused to release the list of those schools. Then they claimed only 50 schools didn't have the space, but our analysis showed that about half of all students could not attend school full-time with any sort of social distancing given current room sizes and class sizes, with about 1/3 of all kids in classes of 30 or more. It was partly for that reason that the City Council pushed hard for $250 million to be allocated next year for class size reduction out of the $8 billion in additional federal and state aid our schools are due to receive, both for the sake of social distancing and for stronger academic and social emotional support. But the mayor and the DOE refused to fund this. After we published this list of 73 Tier 1 schools that the DOE had admitted they had no space for social distancing, they told principals, "You're on your own." The CSA, the principals union, circulated a memo saying the DOE is now telling principals they only have to socially distance when possible. If they don't have the space or the staffing, they don't have to provide any social distancing at all. Our analysis of DOE data shows that nearly 500,000 of New York City students are in overcrowded buildings, including 78,000 students in Bronx alone, and 43,000 students in District 10 and District 11, which overlap with your congressional district. Clearly, if there was a remote option next fall, this would lessen the overcrowding in school buildings and provide a safer environment for those students who have chosen to have in-person learning next year. At this point, about 64% of large districts across the country, including Los Angeles and Miami, are offering a remote option to parents, and there's no reason that New York City should not do this as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I know we're pressed for time. So would you like to respond to this section, or should we continue, Congressman?
So I had a couple of questions. What are the COVID positive COVID test rates in the Bronx right now? Have you spoken to the chancellor about this or written any kind of letter, and have you received any correspondence? And same thing with the same question with the mayor's office, any correspondence there?
Well, we're glad you asked, because we did have a roundtable with the chancellor, and she did promise to continue to have the dialogue with us. Nothing so far since we had a roundtable with her on July 1st. We have asked the mayor to come to the table to have a roundtable as you're doing right now. The mayor has totally ignored us. And we have spoken to the UFT. In fact, we held a rally in front of the UFT asking the UFT to come to the table to speak to us. Nothing has happened. The CSA has agreed to come to the table. So we have had press conferences. We have released a statement. We have written letters, nothing. And in terms of the COVID rates, it really depends where in the Bronx you look, but I know there are neighborhoods in the Bronx that are at 6% as we're speaking. You know, it's outrageous, the fact that parents are speaking, parents are organizing, and no one is truly listening or coming to the table to speak to us, except for you, of course. The candidates.
You said the chancellor also met with you.
I'm sorry?
You said the chancellor did meet with you.
Yes, but to no avail. Right?
Mayor did not, UFT did not, Principals Union did not.
The Principal Union will be having a roundtable with us on Friday.
Okay, but UFT and Mayor not yet. What about Dr. Betty Rosa?
She has not responded to anything that we have sent to her so far.
And Chancellor Lester Young?
So far, nothing, but we will keep trying.
Yeah, please keep trying, both in writing and other means, like every day until you get something. Because I would, you know, this needs to be a whole of government approach. So I just want to encourage you to do that. Yeah, so, when you have high community transmission of COVID, which the Bronx has, it's advised to have a remote option. So that's something I do support. And it's something I hope the city will come around on. I think they were very early in declaring that they would, go full throttle in-person learning. I think they were early on that, and that was before the Delta variant has been sort of raging as it's currently raging. So I'm hoping this is something they'll reconsider. I'll be in touch with the mayor's office and Dr. Rosa and Chancellor Porter myself to see what those thoughts, what they're thinking, and I'll share those thoughts with you. I would also encourage to I don't know if there's a Brooklyn group or a Queens group of parents, like whatever groups of parents are out there. I think it's good for you all to communicate with the powers that be together to sort of demand that this option be made available. And I think your local CECs as well. I know there's a citywide CEC group. I'm forgetting the name of it, but I think
the ECC.
Yeah, I think that group would be important as well. And then what's the other parent group? There's others. I'm forgetting the names.
There are many.
Yeah, but you want an all hands on deck approach here. And I think a CEC resolution to the city might be the way to go here, stating that you would like this parent option and why. Another thing that I don't think we talk enough about in the Bronx that I think is also really important is the option for alternative learning spaces as well, like outdoor learning spaces and other spaces. I think that's something that should really be implemented. In order to lower class size, you're going to have to hire more teachers. I would love to see, and Dr. Tobias isn't here anymore, but I would love to know what the plan is in terms of hiring additional staff to implement alternative learning spaces to make that a reality, whether it's outdoor or other spaces. But it is something I support. I think it makes sense. I personally, even before the Delta variant began to, rage as it's doing now, I thought that sort of remote options would be like a normal thing now in schools.
Exactly.
But not just for the COVID piece, but there's just certain kids who have certain social anxieties that, especially in a place like middle school, the remote option would be better for them. Having said all of that, I think there are circumstances where parents would choose the remote option for their child, where we should really be getting that child back into a school building because, there's benefits to being in a school building with your friends and just getting used to it. So there is a balance there, right? But if there are pre-existing conditions, if a parent is not fully comfortable, if there's high community transmission, and low community vaccination rate, which the Bronx has all of that, then a remote option makes sense. And I don't want to speak for anyone, but I'll reach out to them, have a conversation, and see where we are. And please continue to do all the work you've been doing around increasing vaccination rates, because not just related to this issue, but overall, man, we just need people to get vaccinated because it's just really a scary time, with all of this.
Well, thank you so much for that. And I can tell you, you have in a way preempted us, because the whole argument that we have based on our agenda actually touches on the fact that there are some kids like Jennifer will be presenting on, and I hope you'll stay around for that because she's actually pretty much next.
Yeah, I got 4 minutes.
Okay, so Jennifer, I will let you go along with Amy, because that touches on exactly what the Congressman just finished speaking about. Thank you.
Good evening, Congressman Bowman.
Yeah, Congressman, don't be messing up, man. I
Oh,
worked real hard to get to Congress. Don't be
yes.
putting me in the, even though city council is very important too.
Good evening. My name is Amy Tsai. I am a leader here on the Bronx Parent Leaders Advocacy Group, as well as CC member for District 75 citywide programs, as well as many hats around our advocacy around education. So just want to wrap up with a couple of things is, as you know, we have 1.1 million students in New York City, and 20% of that, which is 220,000 students with IEPs, individual educational plans. Students with disabilities obviously need services and supports that are mandated by the federal law, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Educational Act. Every student should have equity, access, and quality. Equity across free public, appropriate public education in less restrictive environments. Students that need related services, accommodations, school bus transportations, and other supportive staff members. All of these individuals deserve to have inclusive and diversity in their school culture to ensure that there's full access and quality. Access for students with assistive technology, devices that are tailored to their needs, parents with resources and manuals to support them through IEP meetings, as well as assessments. And as well as to make sure that our students have handicap accessibility in each and every school. So when they are placed and enrolled in school, they are not limited to the buildings. And to just kind of finalize it, lastly, there are 75,000 special education complaints in 2020, and only 21 special investigators are investigating these cases. And they go from 30 days to possibly over a year to ensure that a student does have their services in place. Again, this is not just a city issue. This has always been a historical issue. The pandemic has only highlighted this issue. And in presentation, you will see, this is the report that Department of Education from February 2021, this school year. This is the Bronx results. So you see green highlighted districts have full met needs to the students. Blue are students that are partially met, and then the orange ones are what are not met for the students. Community School District 9 is the highest rate of students with IEPs, and they have not met. Community School District 10 follows along with that too as well. So I will turn it over to Jennifer, and she will share her story. Thank you so much.
Good evening, Congressman Bowman. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. I know you're very busy. My name is Jennifer Goddard. I'm the parent of a 9-year-old public city student. This is him, always helpful to have a face. He is very bright, very curious. He tested gifted and talented, but we opted to keep him in regular schooling because he also is twice exceptional. He has ADHD and anxiety issues that have different challenges for his education. So we chose a local school that had a lot of great engagement opportunities, a kitchen class, a garden, all kinds of different ways for him to stay engaged and involved to try to counteract that ADHD. But as bright as and amazing as he is, he wasn't working up to his potential. His grades were poor because he wasn't able to focus and be organized. So we got him an IEP with support services, at-risk counseling, speech language therapy to help him focus and organize. And unfortunately, he also has health issues. He has asthma and an immune disorder where the COVID-19 pandemic was a very harrowing and continues to be a very harrowing experience for a child who was nearly hospitalized with the flu before COVID even happened. So anyway, it's a daily struggle to keep him safe. And when the schools closed in March 2020, we were worried about how he would do in remote schooling, but we realized it was a blessing in disguise. He quickly took to remote learning. He was able to work at his own pace with fewer distractions. He felt like his teacher was talking directly to him. Even if she was a video recording, he felt like she was, talking one-on-one. He loved to be able to take frequent movement breaks. He was able to work wherever he wanted to in the apartment and have that physical space just kind of open up for him that he wouldn't have in the classroom. His third grade teacher was blown away by his progress. And by the time he started fourth grade in September, we were one of the 60% of parents who opted to do remote learning. I think it was like 600,000 some odd parents, students. So even though his anxiety was still high because of the pandemic, it was manageable. We got the remote services, thankfully, that he was contracted to get. His grade continued to improve, and I'm happy to report that the student that we saw at home was a totally different student than what was in the classroom. He finished the school year meeting or exceeding standards in every subject and reading at 2 grade levels above his peers. So, the potential that we knew was trapped inside of him, the pandemic, the silver lining, as horrible as the pandemic is and continues to be, his potential was unleashed. And we would not have known this had it not happened. So, there are things that he can do in remote learning that he's not gonna be able to do in the school. And things like, playing with the clicker and not disrupting his classmates, or shifting in his chair and not disrupting his classmates, or, the noises he makes when he's thinking hard on a math problem. He's not going to disrupt people. And this freed him that he would never be able to do in person. So, and I hear this from other ADHD support parents saying, my student, this kid is a totally different child. So I think what I'm hoping is that to please amplify the platform that you have to say, during the pandemic, it is imperative that we offer this option for students who have anxiety, for students who are, medically compromised, for students who have ADHD, whatever it is, to keep that option open, but also going forward into the future for schools that are going to be, continue to be overcrowded and underfunded. Keep that option on the table, because as we've learned, students with special learning needs, with special education needs, their potential could be unleashed if their homes are able to provide, or alternative learning spaces are able to provide. We should keep looking at that. We should keep considering that. So that's what I wanted to let you know.
Thank you so much for that, Jennifer. And go ahead, Congressman, if you want to respond.
I have to run. But this was really excellent. As I mentioned, I'm going to contact the mayor's office and the chancellor's office to see if I could get some information to you as soon as possible. I think you should write a collective letter with every parent group in the city that will sign on and send it to the mayor and the chancellor, but also make it public. So make sure the Daily News posts the letter. Really important to do that. And then do the petition, do the social media stuff, but do it in a coordinated way so it's all happening at the same time. So, at that time, I can also elevate it using my social media platform as well to bring more attention to it. But letter, petition, privately and publicly. Once you get confirmation, the Daily News will publish it. Then we unleash it all at the same time. But again, I'm hoping that based on the new information, Delta variant, high rates of transmission, low rates of vaccination in a place like the Bronx, that the remote option is provided. The other thing I will say is this: with the remote option has to come professional development and support for teachers and investment in remote curriculum, because there's a lot of schools that struggled with this, and we're already late in terms of what that professional development will look like. That's a key piece, because while there are kids who thrived under these circumstances, there were many kids who struggled, and we would hope they go back to school, but if they choose not to, that the remote option is one that's comprehensive and robust. Okay, gotta go, y'all. Peace and love. Thank you so much. This was great.
Thank you so much. And I hope your staff is staying, right? Because we have more to say and take notes for you.
Yes, I will certainly be staying and make sure to take any notes that we have and share them with Congressman Bowman right afterwards.
Thank you so much.
And just one last thing, this is all great, but you're preaching to the choir when you're talking to me. So just, you want to save these bullets for the people you need to convince. You don't need to convince me, but it's all good. My staff.
Well, that's why we want your help. We want you to help us organize better and be heard, right?
Exactly.
And that is the reason we wanted this roundtable with you.
100%. All right, y'all. Peace and love. Have a good night.
Thank you. Peace and love. Have a good night. Okay. So now, thank you so much for that, Amy and Jennifer. So we'll continue now with Rufina Blake, who will speak about the need for CTE and new constructions when it comes to school buildings.
Good evening, everyone. As a newly retired teacher of 30 years plus, a vocational educator, as well as a graduate from a vocational education school, Aviation High School, and a proud Bronx parent who has a child in college at Xavier University in Louisiana, I am a proponent for vocational education. I have been able to teach many students as a licensed aircraft mechanic and a teacher of aviation mechanics and flight at a vocational school at Park West in Manhattan. We graduated, I would say, at least 200 to 300 students that graduated with actually private pilot's licenses at the age of 18. We also graduated people in the culinary industry as well as elevator mechanics. The ability to be able to give our children the opportunity to step into a career after high school and be able to put food on the table for their families is something that the Bronx needs immensely. There have been several schools, CTE schools, that have been shut down in the Bronx that need to be reopened. And we also need to find different alternative spots and places for new CTE schools and programs. In order for our children to be able to compete in the 21st century, we can't start at high school anymore. We really have to start in the middle school. So in saying that, and in creating a program, which is a non-for-profit called VOCAP, we are trying to push our students in the middle school to be able to have these skills so that they can compete in the 21st century. Giving our students the ability after graduating high school to go into a career that they love, that is one of the greatest achievements that education can have. And I'm just hoping that the Congressman's office and the Congressman also has a passion for vocational education, and to see that we need to give our students the choice, many choices as to which directions that they want to go into. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Rufina. And now we'll move on to Aurora Rhonda, and I think she's going to be the only one because Shauna, I don't think, is on, and that will speak about the effect of the NYCHA. Oh, Shauna is here. The NYCHA housings and basically the economic situation, right? For kids who are living below the poverty line and how that affects education. Thank you.
Good evening, parent leaders, esteemed colleagues, and Congressman Bowman. I am speaking on housing issues and the impact of families being displaced and the effect it could have on children and their education. The poor quality of life that is being experienced in households, from lead, mold, repairs to walls that are disintegrating, unkept buildings and grounds. These are implorable living conditions and have taken its toll on hundreds of thousands of children and their education. Families are complaining of not being able to afford uniforms or possibly supplies, and now the fear of being evicted looms. Thousands of New Yorkers have applied for ERAP, and the cases are pending because resistance from managers in NYCHA. I've read an article in the Post that the money can be taken back if not used by September 30th, 2021. Our children need to be in stable, secure environments in order for them to excel in life. Our children need stability, not uncertainty. Most landlords in private dwellings have linked accounts with tenants, but night shift facilities have not. It took me one entire month in the Throgs Neck houses, which houses 1,900 families, just to get a housing link so tenants can link accounts to ERAP. The schools in Throgs Neck have 2/3 of the children that live here in the Throgs Neck houses in each school. How can you help expedite NECHA filling out the landlord portion and ease the anxiety people are feeling about being displaced, given the family's security? These families are experiencing anxiety, panic, and they are in distress and need to know that they will have security and stability, which will help the students excel in their education.
Okay, thank you for that, Aurora. Shanna, did you want to add anything? Okay.
No, not right now.
Okay, thank you. And now we'll move on to, well, actually, Dr. Tobias already spoke, and I think then we'll move on to Sandra Mitchell concerning the technological divide. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Blessings, and thank you for coming to this space so that we can speak together. My name is Chaplain Sandra Mitchell, and I'm a certified mental health and substance misuse counselor, trainer, and also a tutor in comprehensive math and reading comprehension. I appreciate you taking the time with us this evening. I want to share with you how important it is for the Department of Education and the government to assist students and families in bridging the technological divide, so that our youth educational and constitutional rights are not impeded or valid. These are two barriers that I'd like to focus upon why there is a disparaging lack of participation of internet connection in the Bronx and other communities as well. One is lack of finances, and two is broadband deserts. As a person who identifies as an individual living with disabilities, most of them mobile, my income is nowhere near what it used to be where I was working. No matter how much of a good steward I am, everything that is not a necessity, oftentimes I must sacrifice. Many of our families with children of school age are in the same dilemma. I moved from the shelter in Manhattan to my apartment in the Bronx. I never imagined that I had moved into a broadband desert. I asked my neighbors, what do they do to connect to the internet? And most reported that they have no access at all, or non-access to a device, or at best, they will travel to a space where they can connect. I tried doing that, but again, with my mobility challenges, that was impossible. It's impossible for me to go to school, impossible for me to work it from home. My community consists of many, many children and youth ages for pre-K through college. Just 3 months ago, after living here for almost 4 years, our community was blessed with a hardwired connection, i.e. the Fire sticks, to be able to gain access to internet connection. However, the cost is still a barrier. Most people are still not back to work, are in survival mode. Not being connected to broadband impedes the ability to access much needed learning tools. For me, working from home, it's not possible. I don't have the connection still. And also to continue my education must be placed on hold. The community is suffering the same thing. We're all in this together. It's the same for all the children and their families. In order for our children to be able to be successful and to be able to gain the access to the tools that they need, the absolute necessary tools that they need to be educated and to be successful, we need help from the government and we need help from the Department of Education to connect us to broadband. I'm in the same boat as the children, and my future is counting on you. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, Sandra. And now, since I guess the Congressman spoke enough that he had his final statement and what have you, so we'll move to Gina Staten for a closing statement. And I guess since we're close to time, the public session, I guess, will not take place. So thank you, Gina, if you can close us out.
Well, I just want to say thank you to everyone for attending tonight, Congressman Bowman, staff, Thank you to the congressman for taking the time to come out tonight and hear us. As you see, we are all deeply concerned parents, educators, who, as you know, this pandemic has taken its toll on the education system, on us, on our children. And we have honest and deep concerns about the future of our children's educations. And we want to make sure that their best interest is at the forefront of any decision being made going forward. So, as I said, we thank you for listening to our concerns, and we hope to be working with you in the future.
Absolutely. And Farrah, if I could have a quick moment just to respond to some of the comments that have been made over the last few minutes. First off, thank you all for taking the time to join us here today and for bringing this group together. I know Congressman Bowman was very excited to hear from parents, educators, and people involved in this work, knowing that he has dedicated his life to it, as well as knowing that the challenges that we will face in the coming weeks as we go back to school are immense and varied, and we have to have a holistic response to make sure that we do everything we can to protect all of our children holistically and in a 360 fashion. So a couple of things that I wanted to make sure I mentioned related to things that have come up recently in terms of vocational training. That is certainly something Congressman Bowman has been vocal on in the past, knowing that the idea that there is a one-size-fit-all solution for students as they graduate from high school or as they leave elementary school is flawed, at the very least, knowing that all of our children are unique and they have different passions in this world and different ways to flourish as a result. And knowing that vocational training is a great way to ensure that some of those passions can be fulfilled and you can hone those talents that not only allow you to flourish in your own life, but also get gainful employment that actually oftentimes has very lucrative pay as well as solid benefits. That seems like a very strong solution for many of our children. And we need to make sure we invest in the programs that could actually expand access to as many students as possible there. Related to housing issues, that is certainly a focus for the congressman. He is a co-sponsor of the Green New Deal for public housing, which is designed to invest over $180 billion in public housing to make sure that we remove all of those damaging materials in schools, in public housing units, such as lead and mold, and we remove the $70+ billion repairs backlog that currently exists in public housing, specifically over $40 billion of it in NYCHA alone. So that is certainly very much a focus for the congressman. And the issue of the technological divide is one in which one of our colleagues, Ruthie, is working very closely on right now. We've introduced Congressman Bowman introduced the Broadband Justice Act early in the year that looks to change the way that we subsidize broadband connection in this country to ensure that low-income residents, especially those in public housing units, are getting the extra money that they need every month to get real broadband connection and not the bargain basement barely giving you access to the internet service that many of these ISPs try to provide to low-income residents, but meaningful, effective, high-speed broadband connection that allows you to actually get on a Zoom and participate in online classes or participate in an interview or something of that nature. So I say all that to say that, as Congressman was saying before, these are all issues that are very much close to his heart. These are all issues that he is working on, and we are looking forward to finding opportunities to work with you guys on.
You so much, because the congressman did express to me that he would like to continue to work with us and help our parents become stronger as advocates. So, and we know that he'll be back at the end of the month. So we look forward to getting back in touch with him when he's back in the US, because I believe, well, I can't tell where he's going, but yes, he won't be in the country for a while. So we hope when he comes back, we'll be able to, again, have another activity with him and work more closely with him so that we can continue to advocate at the highest levels and act and really be heard. Because right now, what the city is doing, not acceptable. What the chancellor is doing, not acceptable. But thank you so much for your time and everyone who made this happen, because I want you guys to know that we pulled this together in less than 24 hours. And so thank you to the office of the congressman for actually making it possible and for working with us, for him to be here and I guess be late to his other event, but we really appreciate it and we'll be in touch. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much. And I hope you have a wonderful night.
Thank you. So with that, I guess we'll say, have a good night, everyone. Unless Jamie or Jaime, I'm sorry, I can't pronounce the name properly. You want to take questions from the audience?
I certainly would not want to take questions in lieu of the congressman. What I can say is I'll just reiterate what he said at the end, which is you are preaching to the choir here. I think it is most important for us to find ways to amplify the work that you all are doing on the ground and be as helpful as possible in that regard. But beyond that, certainly would not presume to speak for the congressman. So I'm going to politely decline to take questions, but I thank you again for bringing this group together today.
Thank you
So I
so
just want
much.
to put in a plug because these folks have been working for over a month and we've been working collectively. And I think that has to be said in this space, that we have been speaking to parents in Brooklyn. We have been speaking to parents in Manhattan. There is a petition. There's also an action letter that has been uplifted as of 3 weeks ago. And we would love, like, we can tag, I'm surprised that the congressman has not seen it yet. But we can definitely tag him on our social media platforms so that he can elevate it. Melinda Anderson, who has been one of the reporters that has focused on the plight of Black parents in public education this last year, has uplifted the petition as well. And so we just want to make sure that, you know, he has the platform, he has access to all these folks. I'm sure that a phone call from him will definitely get some ears ringing. And so I just, you know, want him to know that there are resolutions that have been passed by CECs. There have been letters. We have engaged with media. These folks have been doing this work and getting it in different platforms for literally the last month. Daily news, local newspapers. It's been relentless.
Doctor, I think you went on mute there at the end, but I think that's absolutely right. And I'll make sure to bring that to the congressman's attention. I'm sure he's seen it as well. It's just it has been a particularly hectic day, to say the least. So it might just not have been in the front of his mind right at this moment. But what I will say is anything that you want to make sure that you get in front of him, please send that my way and we'll make sure he takes a look.
Thank you so much. And I guess we'll say good night. And thank you to everyone on the team for Bronx Flag and everyone on the team, on your team, Jamie. So thank you for that and have a good night. And we'll look forward to connecting with you again and continuing the work.
All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Yes. And guys, the debriefing link so we can come back and debrief.